don't know if you recall, going back to the start of training camp, a number of you asked about Phil and signing an extension with him. The answer then was we weren't about to throw money at any player, Phil included, until we were sure and I was comfortable that he wanted to be in Toronto. Late last week, Phil and I got together, and it wasn't really strictly about his contract. I think you all know what happened last week. So we were together for other issues, and he brought up to me how important it was to stay. And that's when we started negotiations. There weren't negotiations early in camp. I wanted to hear from him, and I wanted him to tell me that he wanted to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. And once he did, we worked quickly and were able to reach an agreement.
Did the Boston series provide you an indication of what type of player you see Phil being moving forward?
I think it helped. Phil pointed out, if you're not getting better, you're staying the same, or getting worse. And I think Phil made some great strides in that series. He had a great year. He's had several great years. That's the one thing I think people overlook. If you look at his point totals and his goal totals over the last 2 and 3 seasons, he's up there with some pretty elite players. He's in the top 2 or 3 in several categories. So it's not like he hadn't done anything prior to that series, but his desire to win and to compete and to do things that don't come natural to him, I think that opened a lot of people's eyes. One thing with that is that he has to continue doing that, and he knows it.
David, sometimes you say it takes a while to see if a trade has worked out. When the trade happened with the Bruins, some people were opposed, some people were for it. Can we say now that that trade was a good trade for you guys with the decision you made today?
Well, I think so. I think it was a good trade for both teams. Boston got some pretty good assets that they've been able to turn into quality players. And we're happy with Phil. We've always been happy with his production. Again, you forget how young a player he was when he got here. And just by looking at his age today, you realize how young he was. He's still 25 until tomorrow. And that's, he's got a lot of quality years left ahead of him. And that was one of the reasons why we were very comfortable going to an 8-year term with him.
David, have you noticed a change in his personality at all over the last couple of years?
Yeah, no question. Phil's, and the one knock that Phil had on him, which I think was totally unfair, was that he wasn't a great teammate. And from the day he got to Toronto, I think that we've been able to tell that was completely untrue. He's quiet. Maybe he's not as outgoing as some of the people in the Canadian market would like, but he's a great teammate. He's well liked by everybody in our room. We wouldn't have looked to extend Phil if we didn't think he was a great fit in Toronto.
Dave, you have a lot of upcoming free agents next year, and beyond for them still. Do you think maybe during the season you might look to do something with some of those players just because of the uncertainty with the trade if they all went open?
Well, possibly, but I'm not going to promise that either. I mean, then we address everybody individually. There's reasons for looking at extending one person and maybe not the other. There's a lot of things that go into it, so I wouldn't say, we're going to have a monthly announcement on signing free agents.
When you measure an 8-year deal and the risk and reward of how do you assess that situation?
Elite players are going to get it. Again, look around the league. If you want to retain an elite player, you're going to probably have to give them a fairly lengthy term. What you want to make sure is, or as comfortable as you can be, that player is going to be able to perform at a high level for most, if not all of it. And again, Phil being 26 years old, I'm pretty comfortable that we've got 8 years, hopefully the best 8 years of his career. It's going to be wherever he wants it to go. Like, if he wants to continue that compete that he showed in the postseason, and I'm not saying that's going to happen every game over 82 games. I think players like Phil, that's not who they are. But if he wants to continue working on his conditioning and his strength and his playmaking, all those things that have improved over the last 3 or 4 years, Phil should continue to improve. We shouldn't see a flat line. He should keep getting better. And there is pressure that comes with 8 years. There's pressure that comes with the kind of money that he's getting, and that he understands that. He's he's a pretty confident guy. You know, again, you probably don't get a chance to talk to him one-on-one and in a private setting, but, you know, Phil is comfortable. He was comfortable if we didn't sign him. He was comfortable going the rest of the year and testing for agency. He didn't want to, but it wasn't where he was desperate to get a deal done. I can tell you that.
Do you envision winning a championship with Phil Kessel as the best player?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. You know, and again, I think you look. I spend a lot of time, as you guys do, looking at teams that I respect and that I think that have won. And there's a lot of players on those teams that I can compare to Phil. I think it's about having great players, and it's also about surrounding great players with the right type of personalities and character and people that will push others to be the best they can be. So I don't believe one player, or rarely does one player, win a Stanley Cup. I think it still is the group that does it.
Did you have two more for Dave? Did you ever look at doing a shorter deal, Dave, or is this sort of the norm now for guys in this situation?
Well, I looked at doing a shorter deal, but we wouldn't be sitting here right now if that's where we're going to end up.
Dave, that contract puts him in the top 10 of the NHL as far as his length of the deal. Is that where you view him as an NHL player among the top 10?
Well, the length of the deal, you know, again, there's a lot of players that have longer contracts from the prior CBA, so I don't think that puts him in the top 10 there. In terms of, yeah, and again, you can debate that for a lot of issues. Again, because those long-term deals were front-end loaded, you know, really over those 8 years, where would Phil be in that? I don't know. I don't have the answer for you, but I bet you it's not in the top 10. But if we look at his production, he is the top 10 player. He's been in the top 10 in scoring. He's been in the top 10 in goals. You know, he's a player that, you know, that's put himself in some pretty elite company, and he's done that himself. So I don't think it's a stretch to say that we're paying him, and the term doesn't fit the player.